get the thing rolling first. The
Okay.
stream. We're ready to go. Go ahead.
Oh. Okay. Calling the meeting to order. The Business Improvement District Board meeting, February 3rd. I'm sorry, February 17th, 2021. Calling to order at 1:04 p.m. Let's go ahead and do roll call.
Marcus.
Present.
John Dixon.
Present.
John Gladwell.
Present.
Travis Scott.
Present.
Cindy Wagner.
Present.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Great. I'm not seeing anywhere on the agenda where we have approval of minutes from previous meetings.
It's down in the regular calendar. For some reason, Angie put it down in the regular calendar area under 6B and 6C.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the wrong document here. February 17th. Weird. I'm clicking on the link to the agenda that was sent on February 5th. And let's see. It's taking me to a weird place on the county website. I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda up yet. My apologies. There it is. Okay. Okay, so looks like we will do the approval of minutes, yes, later down in the regular calendar for 2 meetings. All right, any matters from the staff?
I don't have any. Adrian will be joining us momentarily.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Great. Moving on then, any communications received or filed?
I don't have anything, and there's been nothing received through the public email.
Okay. We'll move on to matters from the public. As there are no members of the public present, I presume there are no matters from the public.
Nope.
Unless any of the board members want to mention something as a member of the public. Hearing none, we'll move on to the regular calendar, 6A. Continue discussion and direction concerning the draft annual report for 2021-22. Travis, I'll go ahead and let you take the lead on this.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I have made some strides in moving this forward since I was last with you. We have almost all of the charts and graphics inserted. The budget is now inserted. We are waiting for the study with DMAI to come back for our KPIs and annual fund usage compared to the normals. So that's the last thing coming there. I have also received responses from Sherry Shatmeyer, the Treasurer Tax Collector, with status updates for the items that were recommended to her department. Just trying to find those right now. So I'm scrolling. And it looks like those begin on page 25. And Sherry has submitted one answer for both of the recommendations. So currently I just plopped that answer in both spots on page 25 and the top of page 26.
Sorry, Travis, I was muted. Just give us all a second to reference that.
Yep, absolutely. Let's.
Word is being slow. You didn't happen to send out a PDF version of this, did you?
I did not send a PDF version. I can if you like.
No, if everyone's able to open it on Word and review it, then that should be fine. Just my computer's being slow. Page 25.
I've got it open.
Travis, is that the page 25? Is her response for number 7? Is that what we're looking at?
It's for, let's see, let me count up. Yes, her response to the 2 items under number 7, correct. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So the second to last paragraph, status update in yellow.
So I suppose if we have any questions regarding this, we should wait for Adrian to
Yeah.
step into the meeting.
Yeah, and I know she's working on getting
that
board
would be the
dates.
most appropriate person, I think.
Yep.
I like that her response includes extreme optimism. That's not a phrase I've heard recently very often, and I am glad to read it.
I mean, I do appreciate the response. Once again, though, my concern is not my concern. My, I understand they have to wait to understand the software before they can start implementing the data, but still, I don't see why we can't. That this recommendation is that the form be altered. To start collecting the data. This isn't a recommendation that they created, to create software to compile the data. This specific request is that they just change the form to start collecting the data. And if they do that now, even though they don't have the software to get understanding the software to compile it and enter it, at least there would be record of it. So I don't know if this board feels that we want to re-recommend or just re-recommend very specifically that it just be the forms that change and start going out with the data, or if we just wait patiently, as this seems to be happening, as John pointed out, extreme optimism, that we just wait for them to go along with this process versus pushing too hard. Does anybody have an opinion on that? Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense, Marcus. I think what they're kind of saying is that there's some movement on it, but it's part of me was going to say before I looked at the details of it, I thought maybe something might actually happen in the next month before we actually have to submit this, and maybe we'd wait until. But it says there's going to take them a few months to see if it actually is going to collect the data that is requested. So maybe, as you say, just update it, but leave it as something, because we're going to have to revisit it next year, it seems.
Yeah, it sounds like you're right. It won't be something we'll be able to that'll be determined before we have to finalize this report. But I guess my suggestion is that we create a new recommendation that says, pending the ability to collect this data, we recommend that the forms be changed immediately. So the start of the next quarter, this information will be on the forms for the lodging owners to provide. So the data will be there once once the system is figured out on how to compile it. I would, I guess, like to suggest that we put that as a new recommendation. Of course, I don't want to irk anybody or push too hard, but it doesn't seem like it would be that difficult. If they intend to eventually collect this data, why not change the form ASAP? All the lodging owners already got the next form, which will be for the end of this current quarter that we're in. So the next form after that will be for collecting the data of what are we in February? We'll be collecting the second quarter of the calendar year, and those forms won't go out until March until April. So if this board felt strongly enough to recommend that they just put those on the forms so they can start collecting them as the second quarter of the calendar year 2021, I would recommend that we put that as a recommendation, just to keep them on their toes. Does anyone else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Well, and I think, yeah, and so that recommendation is in there, and it sounds like, I mean, I think the recommendation is in there, but that her response was duplicated and applied to, so it's sort of, her response is relevant to the second bullet point that she responded to, but maybe not as much for the first bullet point. Is that how you're reading this too? It's the form is a manual request to collect the data from lodging operators. The software upgrade is the ability to be able to compile that data once it's received. But you know, if the software is upgraded and the data isn't there, then we'll have to continue to make a recommendation for the form to accept that the data that we're looking for. And so you're just saying, be proactive, gather the data now, and even if we can input that retroactively once the software is up and running, then we'll be ahead of the game. And so is that correct, how I'm interpreting what your suggestion is?
Yes, that's correct. Basically, going to the recommendation, the first part of the recommendation, and just saying we recommend that the forms be changed immediately to list average daily occupancy and average daily rate on the forms. That we make that recommendation. Those be listed on the forms starting second quarter of 2020-21. Simplify it, make it clear. We just want to put that on the forms. Forget the rest of it of compiling the data. That will continue to be a separate recommendation that exists as a second part of this previous recommendation.
Yeah, I follow you, and I guess for the record, I completely agree. I wonder if maybe we've failed in communicating those steps, so that, I mean, why hasn't it happened before where the forms have been adjusted? And I think the response was, well, we as a county don't have a way to analyze that data, so why collect that information?
Exactly.
And us as operators are saying that's not what we're asking. That's not the important part. It's just to have the data available so that if and when software exists to analyze that data, it's there. And so maybe instead of just copy and pasting our recommendation, we can reword it so that it's very basic, saying, without the intention of using this data yet, ... please just change the form so that we can start collecting it. And as we are extremely optimistic that the software will be helpful as well, then in the future, we can use it to analyze that data that's already been collected. And maybe that's the approach we can take.
Yep, that's what I was recommending that we do. Thank you, John. So can we,
Sure.
Travis, do you got enough information to mock up a recommendation actionable by the county based on what John and I just talked about, or do we need to kind of hash it out, just word for word?
What I'm thinking is reusing the same points of things that we wanted in there, but adding,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to begin it with, as previously recommended in the FY 1920 and FY 2021 bid advisory reports. The advisory board asks the Board of Supervisors direct the county treasurer tax collector to A, revise the TOT and bid collections form, and that as of what date do we want it began collecting the data. Then I'll further say average daily occupancy and average daily rate. This will allow the advisory board and contractor to, and that's where I stopped when.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Can we change where on the very last sentence where it says it begin collecting data? Can we say begin collecting information? I just wonder if maybe the county reads it as we don't have the software to examine the data, so we can't do that. I don't understand why there hasn't really been a response on this yet, and so I'm just trying to figure out why it's being hung up so much after so many years.
I'm in agreement, John. I think we should make this clear and clean as possible that we're not looking to collect the data. I mean, well, I'm afraid that they're going to think that we're talking about compiling it when we say collecting it. I think it should just simply say that the forms be revised to have average daily occupancy from the hotel, average daily rate from the hotel listed on there. For such purpose, have in the future when the data can be compiled, there is record of it. Something simple like that. Clear, not because I think when they read that we don't have the software to start collecting the data, so why change the forms now? Well, that's the response I want to avoid. I just want to simply say, let's put them on the forms, let's get it out there, and then I guess in a separate, reiterated recommendation is that when the software does exist to compile the data, that it use the changed TOT forms that list the occupancy and the daily rate to input that data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I think you nailed it. I think actually adding a line, so that in the future we can use this data when the system is up and running. Mm-hmm. I mean, just so we're sort of connecting the dots for them, may be the most helpful approach.
Right. I do want to put that in a separate thing. I want this recommendation to be, in my opinion, very clean and clear, as previously recommended in the advisory report and currently recommended again, that the Board of Supervisors instruct the tax collector to revise the TOT forms as of second quarter 2021 to list average daily occupancy and average daily rate from the lodging. And then that's it, boom. And then we'll do a second recommendation that says, that reiterates already another previous recommendation, that when you have the software necessary, that you start compiling data. Travis, was that clear?
Oh yeah.
Go on.
I'm clicking away.
So my opinion is that we just be clean, that previously recommended and currently recommended, BOS directs tax collector to revise the form to list the average daily occupancy and average daily rate, and revise the form as of second quarter 2000, second quarter 2021. Well, or I guess we should list it in accordance to their fiscal year. So I guess that would be for third quarter 2021 fiscal year. Or should we stick with calendar? Anybody have an
We reference the fiscal year twice already in the recommendation, so maybe stick with it.
Stick with fiscal year then. Okay, so then as of third quarter fiscal year 2020, 2021.
Got it. 2020,
Clean.
2021.
Forget any of the compiling of data. We'll do that in a separate re-recommendation.
Okay. I feel like we have that one dialed in.
Great. So that'll be a new recommendation actionable by a re-recommendation listed as a new recommendation, right? Under the actionable by the county 2021-22.
Correct.
Interesting. Wait, 2021. Well, if this is a recommendation actionable for the 2021-2022 fiscal year, we're asking them to actually do it in the year prior to that.
Uh-huh.
So I guess that kind of conflicts with itself, doesn't it? I guess we should say, maybe we should say starting the first quarter of the 2021-2022 fiscal year. By then, they should have figured out how to compile the data and use the software. Does other board members agree?
A quick question. Do we have to make it date specific? Can we say, as soon as next collection period allows, or as soon as possible for the next collection period?
I'm fearful that we'll leave it too open-ended and allow them to just, to make it. I'd like to put a deadline, a date. And I think because, we're talking, that gives them this quarter and next quarter to instruct the tax collector to do so and to change the form. And that way, if we say starting this new fiscal year, 2021-22, that the form be changed with confidence that the software will be used and understood by then to start compiling the data. But we don't have to say that. Just, I think that we say, so Travis, could you change that to be, as of, to change the forms listing the ADO and ADR as of first quarter.
FY 21-22.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Got it.
Rest of the board members okay with that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Great.
Yes.
So then let's go straight into your second recommendation that follows this one with the use of said data.
Right. Well, they already are working on the software, so do we need to re-recommend this? That, well, I guess it probably wouldn't hurt to just cover all bases.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I mean, I think it needs to somehow carry forward. There's movement on the software, but it's not going to be complete before this is over. So we should somehow push it forward. You know what I mean? Track it. Somehow not remake it, but write it in a way that it remains and kicks the can forward a bit.
Yeah. So how about with the knowledge that there is new software being implemented, that we recommend that it start compiling the data of the ADR and the ADO as of the start of the fiscal year. Of the new coming fiscal year. How does the board feel about that recommendation? And provide it, of course, to the relevant parties, barring any confidential or private information. And Travis, just curious, how do you feel this? Do you feel this information is going to be useful for you to use and measure and monitor and it will be?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just asking you. Do you think that these figures will be useful? And then, I guess my question is, and what's the best way the data can be presented to you?
Well, so what happens now is with data presentation is we kind of fumble through the system that she has, mm-hmm. and then find information that's she can share that's not personal information, mm-hmm. and then we kind of mash a report together of what's available. So I would imagine we're going to have to, I'm going to have to work directly with her again under this new system in the same way, mm-hmm. to get access to what we can get access to and how the presentation of that comes through. Without knowing her system, we can't say we want this, 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 and this.
Well, we can suggest, hopefully, the system will allow for this, 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 and this. And if it can, then we would like to recommend that this data be provided in this form, that we get the ADR and the ADO regionally, of all the different 5 sections separately. We get it all for the whole county. We get it all, we could get it, by size of, by the 3 different sizes of the lodgings, small, medium, and large. I presume the more data you have broken down in those various categories will just be more helpful for you. And if that is the case, then perhaps we can also create a recommendation stating that we have hopes that you can provide the data in these forms. And I guess so I'm asking you, what form would that be? my suggestions of getting it regionally as well as countywide, as well as by size of lodging, would you be able to use that data to help promote and provide actually reinforcement to the lodging owners of what VMC is doing and how it's directly affecting them?
Yes. Any and all data I can get my hands on is helpful, and will be used in our reporting.
Mhm.
I guess I want to say this because are we creating a recommendation to create a recommendation? Or can I just work with the treasurer tax collector, which I do all the time, to figure out what's available? And because part of me feels like, well, if I can't get it in this, then I've also got to report back to the group, and we've got to add it into another recommendation. Like, can we just wait until we know what we can get? And maybe I'm trying to simplify the process too much, but yeah, I'm just kind of left at are we writing a recommendation to write a recommendation, or are we writing a recommendation that's actually something that we can get?
Well, if you feel confident that the communication has been good between you and the tax collector, and you're on it, then I suppose we don't need to get too specific on these recommendations. My concern, though, is that I don't know how communicative they've been with you and how on it. I just feel like if we put goals and targets in this, that they'll at least have something to move towards, versus keeping it open-ended. Provide what you can. We don't know what that that is, and it seems like this process has been taking a long time. I just would like to help expedite it rather than leave it open-ended. But if you think they're doing their due diligence and working and don't need the kind of goal-oriented or specific things, targets or goals that we're looking for, then I'm okay with leaving it as an open-ended recommendation that VMC continue to work with the county to figure out what data can be provided once the system is up and running.
Right, and so that's what the original reason for the ADO and ADR ask was for.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basic information that we want to at least have a baseline, and anything above that is icing on the cake. Now, like I said, she hasn't been able over the past couple of years to tell us what information is going to be available to us from that system. Mm-hmm. But what she can give me, she does give me. We work really well together, and they're very timely and prompt, and provide me with what they can.
Does she know what you're looking for? Because I guess that's also what I'm trying to clarify with this recommendation. If they don't know we're looking for the average daily rate for the inland area, or the average daily rate for just the southern coast, then would she know to be able to set up the system or do a search within the system of looking at the ADR via region or via the size of the hotel, small, medium, or large? That's, I guess, my question. And you're probably communicating that, I presume. This is the data we'd like to get. Is this system able to provide it?
Right. And to this point, she can't answer the question of, is her system able to provide it?
Okay. I just thought if we listed out some of the things that we were looking for in this, that would then you don't have to verbally communicate it. It's got something that they can reference with guidance from the Board of Supervisors, giving it as an actual command or recommendation. So I don't know. What do some of the other board members feel about leaving this, getting specific with asking the type of reporting we want to see, or leaving it open-ended to be just communicate once the system's up and running with Travis Scott to provide the necessary data for to provide what's the word? Analytics for interpretation. Go ahead, John Glidewell.
Yeah, I think that it'd be better to leave it open-ended in this case. I mean, just as a feel for how the process has been going, that putting too many fences up may restrict it too far for us to see much additional progress. I guess that's me just being a little cynical because of what we've seen before. Is we've gotten pretty close to getting something, and then 2 or 3 years goes by, and we're still waiting for change. And so, here's a really good indication that we're going to start seeing some change. And the response that we received is that there's extreme optimism. Many of the requested items from us will now be able to be implemented, and I'm okay with kind of leaving that on face value and waiting to see how our ED can work with the collector on developing the best use of that information within its goals. So I don't know. I guess part of requesting too much detail is also very limiting. Let's see how it gets hashed out.
It's about the tax collector and the
Okay. Cindy
form
or
change.
John Dixon, any input?
Is what their question was for you.
I'm
I
just
think.
wondering whether Adrian has come, because maybe she could just give us a little more insight into the process.
Hi, Cindy. I made it.
Hey, Adrian,
But
glad you made it.
Hi. I didn't hear the initial question running in. I did hear process, but which process?
So just to summarize, we're looking at creating 2 separate recommendations. One, that the forms simply be changed as of the start of the new fiscal year, the 2021 fiscal year quarter, that the forms just be changed to list the ADO and the ADR. And then a separate recommendation for that of once the system is up and running and can provide and can compile the information, that the county work with Travis Scott to determine what kind of analytics we can derive from the information that's compiled. I was suggesting perhaps we get specific and say what kind of data we're looking for, the ADR regionally as well as countywide, the ADR based on size of lodging, small, medium, large. But it sounds like and I'm amenable to this, most of the board feels that we should keep it open-ended and just keep it, the recommendation is a communication between the county and our ED, Travis Scott, to determine what kind of data can exist. And I guess Cindy's question to you was, if you know any more about this this software that is going to compile the data and when it might be implemented or understood as to how it can be used to provide.
No, I'm afraid I don't have any information about the tax collector's new database that they purchased actually 3 to 5 years ago. They've owned it for quite a while, and they've been on a waiting list for installation. Planning and building won't have access to it, and we won't be involved in it in any way. So your recommendation will go to the county tax collector specifically. I'm sure they'll give me reports that I ask for them, but I will have no involvement in any way with it. So Travis working with Sherry is probably your best bet, and leaving it open-ended because I have no idea what fields they're going to request or fill in their database.
Okay, yeah, and I'm amenable to that. If Travis, I think you got an understanding here. If you could mock up a recommendation along those lines. Base is up and running. That communication between you and the county tax collector,
So how about this?
continue.
I was writing as you guys were talking that one out. So, with the knowledge that there's new software solution being implemented, we recommend that the Treasurer Tax Collector work with the MCTC Executive Director to analyze what data is available from that system and how that information could be shared anonymously to MCTC.
Great. Yeah, I like it.
Sounds good, Travis.
Perfect. And having heard Adrian's input that the software has been in the hands of the county for 3 to 5 years, it is still possible that the data being compiled still could be a year or so off, which is why I will reiterate that I do think it's important to keep that separate recommendation of just changing the tax forms as of the start, so that way the data is there if we ever want to go back and compile it.
Right.
John Dixon, any input?
I agree with that. Keeping it open-ended, like, not non-specific, and moving it forward in the language that Travis wrote is fine.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments on that recommendation? Perfect. All right, we'll see those two recommendations listed in the next draft report for us to review. Let's continue on.
Sorry, I don't mean to step on your toes, Marcus.
No worries.
But after the last meeting, Callie came back to me and wanted me to draft a talking point, really, for a recommendation. And that is to change the following section of the bid ordinance to include general manager in the following sections: 5.140.030. And then there's some more numbers. And then click here to view the ordinance. And what that is changing or including general manager under, I'm pulling the section up right now, under operator, allowing this group to have a large, and ultimately MCTC, a larger pool of qualified managers to work with.
Travis, is that for all operators or just large lodging operators?
Current, go ahead.
No, that was it. I was just that change. Would that change for would be applicable to medium and small, or just the large?
Currently, the way that I've written it, it would be applicable to everyone. But again, this is just, my draft from her nice conversation. I wasn't included in that meeting, as you know. I was absent, so
right.
I didn't get the feel for where you guys were going.
Well, no, that's pretty much it. We talked about it, but I don't think we got too specific. But I guess my question to the board then is, and to you, Travis, is two things. Do we make it specific only to large so that we don't open up too much of a floodgate? And the other question is general manager the term that we want to use, or do we want to say authorized representative or employee that has worked for a certain amount of years under this organization? So those would be my two questions, I guess, to the board and to you, Travis.
I have some comments.
Go ahead, John Glidewell.
I am in favor of opening it up to more than just the large lodging operators, because I think there's a second gatekeeping process where applications are reviewed and approved by the board. So while it will give us a larger pool and some may not necessarily be as qualified as we like, I think that would be a best case scenario, because we'll just be able to have more applications. So with that second gatekeeping option available, I would say yes, we'd want to keep everyone there. But I do agree, Marcus, that maybe it's important to have the qualifications for the applicant reviewed, so that the experience of that operator is sufficient to actually contribute some value to this board and whatever other position that they may be applying for.
Yeah, that's going to be tricky. This is a voted on position. So if a nominee is accepted, well, it's not really. If a nominee puts themselves out there, then it's not there's no evaluation of their experience. So we would need to set criteria to make sure that any nominees hit that level of experience, because these are elected positions. The small, medium, and large are voted on by by the lodging operators and elected into the position, not appointed.
Sure. One thing that you guys can take a look at is, if you scroll down to page 32 of this report, it does include the applicant requirements to be considered for a board position.
Gotcha. Travis, forgive me because I forget, if there is for example, a medium lodging operator that wants to submit themselves as on the ballot, do they have to go to the MCTC and suggest it, or do they just fill out a form and submit it? How do we know that the person who's not, applying has
Sure.
this criteria
Sure. So
satisfactory?
for a lodging board seat, they would
Mhm.
fill out a declaration of candidacy that comes from the treasurer or tax collector. And
Mhm.
that, along with their application, is reviewed in her office for an elected position. For a non
So if criteria isn't met, it would be determined in that office.
correct.
Okay.
And for other positions on the board that aren't elected, that are appointed positions by the supervisors, those applications come to me and my board does the vetting.
Okay, so it sounds like there is a structure in place to make sure that the lodging nominees meet a criteria, and that's determined by the county tax collector, right? So then, in a sense, I guess if we wanted to, we don't have to list any criteria, it's already listed, so we would just need to specify in our recommendation as to the specific wording of the change. Do we use general manager? Do we use authorized representative, authorized by the owner? Does any other board members have opinion on that wording?
Yeah, I think I like general manager or like position. I think that would hopefully communicate what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think the idea is, and this is just trying to get to the right language, but the idea is qualifications are important. But I think somebody who actually understands the operations of a property, because John is a good example where the owners may not be in the area or on the site. I'm not sure where they are, but he is the operator, so he would be the correct person, and maybe has a title general manager. But it could be a smaller property too, where somebody who actually is running the business, truly the operator for an owner. It doesn't have to be a large property, and that goes back to the question about, do we open this up for all of them? And I think it's correct to do that. But I think if there's not always a general manager, I think it needs to be sort of the operator, the person who's actually sort of running the business, so that they get all aspects of what's happening and how the marketing of the county affects their business and things like that, versus somebody who's at a lower level, frankly. So if that means general manager or like position, then I'm all for that. If that covers it for everybody, in your opinions, then that's fine with me. But I think that what I'm trying to say is, the bottom line is that it's somebody who's actually operating the business on behalf of that owner, whether it's whatever size business it is.
So what if we change that to say, change the following section of the bid ordinance to include general manager or key operations role?
Travis, what's the wording right now as it lists? Because it says operator, right? But it's just kind of ambiguous as to whether that means owner or employee.
Well, right. Sorry, let me switch back to the ordinance.
Because I'm wondering if the ordinance does say operator.
So,
go ahead.
The definition of operator is where we're making the change.
Right.
And in this, it says operator means the person who is proprietor of the hotel, whether in the capacity of owner, lessee, sublessee, mortgagee in possession, license, or any other capacity, including but not limited to use of a management agent.
So can't we just put in employee somewhere in there?
Designated employee?
Or just employee, just owner could be proprietor, comma, employee, comma, yeah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Hey, Travis?
Yeah.
Why don't you just do the operator or designee as appointed by the operator?
I like that.
Yeah, in the county we go designees. It's like I'm the designee as appointed by the CEO.
This became problematic. The reason it is the way it is, it became problematic and abused, frankly. And I think that there was some specific conversations about this, and Kelly brought it up last week too, or last 2 weeks ago. You know, designee is could be any level person, and I think that we want to be specific.
So I liked who suggested key operator. So, or you could employed key operator or key operator on payroll. It sounds like we just need to, I mean, in my opinion, it sounds like we just need to request that we add a more specific wording into this definition of operator. And I like key operator under employment or
how about general manager or employee in key operations role?
Yeah, I like that. So it gives the option of either the proprietor, the general manager, or someone in a key operations role. Because, like, for example, our business, we don't have a designated general manager. And I suppose an owner could say, yes, basically this person is the general manager, even though we don't call them a general manager. And that would be the way around that. But I think if we put, like what you said, Travis, key operator, what did you say? What was the exact words?
Employee in key operations role.
Yeah. I think that works. What does the rest of the board think?
Yeah, I think that's clear.
Or maybe or employee responsible for operations of the business. I would want it. I just want it to be somebody who's responsible for hiring and firing and marketing and paying the bills and all that stuff. If you just say key operations position, it needs to be the person that's running the business for the owner. And if it's not by name a general manager, we need to be specific that it's that person. I think it's an important point. Key operations position is maybe a little bit too broad, in my opinion, but to say the person, the representative, the employee, whatever, the employee of the business who is responsible for operation of the business. I don't know. I just feel like that maybe is something like that maybe is more specific. We just had problems in the past where this kind of thing has been abused, where somebody just sort of assigns somebody for representation. And it's not even about, I don't expect that we'll have that, but I think we just want to be careful because, again, in all these kind of things that we recommend, and this is changing the ordinance, that we need to think about it when it's not us or not the faces or the personalities or the people that we know, but that this is something that's going to, it's founding fathers kind of things, founding fathers and mothers, founding people kind of way to look at this. And we want to just be careful in that way. So that's why I'm sort of sticking on that point, I suppose.
I do see your point, John Dixon, but perhaps we could go back to designee by owner who meets the criteria listed, the criteria listed, I guess. That is something we could also consider because it could be maybe it's a big lodging business and they want to put their PR person on the board as the representation of their their large lodging. So that person necessarily isn't a general manager, but knows a lot of PR, and so I would also, I guess, submit that possibility that we go back to designee of owner who qualifies and meets criteria listed in ordinance, or that is listed in the ordinance, right? Or is it just listed? Travis, where is the criteria listed in addition to these draft or the annual bid reports? Is the criteria listed in the ordinance?
The criteria is, I'm just looking here as we're talking.
It must be in the contract too. Well, contract. It's got to be listed in the bid ordinance. I mean, where else would it be listed?
I know it's listed in our bylaws.
But that it's the county that would be determining, the tax collector that would be determining whether the criteria, this person meets the criteria or not when it comes to a lodging seat. So we would need to make sure that it's somewhere binding to the county.
I have some verbiage suggestions when we're ready, but if we're not there, it can wait.
Go ahead, John. I think Travis is looking for where that might be. We can consider the other verbiage.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with the conversation on key. The term key, I think, is subjective. So I do like general manager, and think that if we say something like general manager or similar employee designated, similar employee designation as ultimately responsible for top level operations, top level company operations, and really just making the case that this isn't a manager, it's the top level manager, or something along those lines where it isn't as subjective. That a front desk manager could apply, but as John said, doesn't have experience in marketing the property, dealing with how decisions really affect operations in different ways. And so anyway, I guess what I was doing was just going to Google and looking up the definition of general manager and trying to elaborate on what it is we're looking for conceptually. But if that's not the right direction, that's fine too.
No, I like that. I like that. General manager or similar, yada, yada, yada. Similar position, similar employee responsible for major operational roles.
Similar employee designated. Yeah, right. Similar general manager or similar employee designated for, ultimately designated for top level responsibility of company operations.
Business operations.
Yeah.
Not every business would consider themselves a company.
Yes.
So can I just throw something out too? I think that's good, John. I like that direction. The reasoning behind this is that, okay, lodging has 5 seats of the 11. And right now, based on what is, and this is just, I know Callie said this 2 weeks ago and reminded us all how we set it up, and John or Marcus wasn't there, so I want to just repeat it. That the reason that there's 3 of the seats are large, and then there's 1 for medium, and then 1 for small, is because it was meant to be representative of the money coming in by percentage. So it's like a third, and a third, I think.
60% large, 20%, and 20%.
Sorry, yeah, right. 5 of them, so 20, 20, 20. So that 20% times 3 was, sort of the large, and then there's 20% is the medium and 20% are the small.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that makes the 5 seats. And Marcus, you were part of that whole thing. Were you here when Callie was here 2 weeks ago? Somebody wasn't. I don't remember. Maybe.
No, we were all here. It was just Travis that wasn't.
Travis. Okay, right. Thanks. Okay. So, so that's the reasoning behind the original thing. Now, not to make this go crazy or whatever, but there are other way to do this. If the idea is to have more of a gene pool of people who will, be willing and able to effectively participate. The other thing we could consider is that it's not 3 large, 1 medium, and 1 small, is that we sort of break that up differently too. And I know that's a kind of a different conversation. I don't know if we have the bandwidth for that today, but if that's the goal, maybe that's something that we could consider. And we didn't really talk about that last time. And I'm not sure I would advocate one way or the other. I kind of like sort of how it is, and I don't want to rock the boat in that way. But certainly, if we said 2 of the seats, say, were for medium, that right there opens up a lot more possibilities, because, on the bell curve of number of types of properties, there's a lot more medium than there are large, right? And so that would just bump up the participation potentially, or the pool of people, of qualified people. So there's another way to sort of maybe do this, and I'm open to sort of discussing all of it, but I think we should consider maybe other options potentially. What do you guys think about that?
I agree, John Dixon. Actually, that was on my to-do to suggest as another recommendation, the possibility of restructuring to change it to 2 large, 2 medium, 1 small. But that is, I think that we should discuss that as a separate recommendation. We should, if we've got that in consideration, it might help us finalize this current recommendation we're working on, but I think we should finalize this current recommendation we're working on and then discuss that other possibility as a separate recommendation.
But would we need both? Isn't the one we're working on?
Like you could have an and or kind of thing.
Right. But would it be bad if both were implemented? I mean, that's it. Would it be most beneficial to this organization and the governance structure if it were to be changed to allow for not just the lodging owners, but general managers and qualified representatives, and also restructure the representation to be 2 large, 2 medium, 1 small? It is more reflective of the number of or types of lodging that are out there. So it wouldn't be so much based, the representation wouldn't so much be based on the TOT collected. It'd be based more on volume of lodging businesses in the county. Of course, we'd have to justify that somehow with data. And, we can't just say, we arbitrarily say that it should be 2 large, 2 medium, and 1 small. We'd have to justify that. But I don't foresee why it would be negative to have possibly both implemented. Or if that is a concern for the most of the board, then as Travis said, we do it either or. And let the supervisors decide if that's what we want to entrust the supervisors to do on our behalf. Input from the board?
Well, I wouldn't do both. I think the idea is to be as clear and change as little as possible. I think that, a lot of work from a lot of different people was done to make this what it is. And I think, and there was lots of reasonings behind it, and we sort of opened a can of worms. So if the desire is to have more people that are able to participate, I feel like the less fraught way to do that than changing the definition of essentially the qualifications and who from a property is eligible. Instead, it's better to open it up to the bigger pool of properties versus, frankly, lower level employees of large and medium and small. I mean, I think that I like the idea
ordinances
of the gene pool getting larger by changing it to 2, 2, and 1, then changing the definition of who's qualified.
Oh, they are chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
Planning and building is chapter 17, 18, 19, 20, 22.
Well, I mean, we still,
That's some of the stuff
if we
I
went the
forgot
route
about.
of requesting the restructuring to 2 large,
It's
2
not
medium,
that.
and 1 small, we still could end up down the line with not enough pool for
the tax collector.
the large.
Oh.
They just gave it to us because Steve didn't.
We're talking what,
Another
20?
one?
Was it 20 properties or 40 properties that are considered large, fluctuating, between that and those numbers? What is it, Travis?
I think Sally said 20.
Yeah. So we're still talking about, we're 10% of we're talking about 2 positions
My email clerk at the board.
rotating between
Remember
20
how
different
Siobhan said Thatcher was
possibilities.
continued to a date certain so we wouldn't have to renotice?
Right.
So, and
Lindsay said they pulled it because the calendar wasn't prepared yet.
Right.
So we have to do
I have
all the
just have a
renotices
question.
for that year and redo the entire
Is it still
package.
Are you
accurate
serious?
that
And guess what date she gave us?
60%
420?
of the revenue comes from
Oh
the
my
from
God.
large,
Cannabis rezone
20
on
from medium,
420.
and 20 from small? Is that still
Yep.
true? Particularly in light of so now that I think I heard that the Airbnb properties are now being brought in, and they would be all the small category. But is that percentage breakdown still accurate?
It is. It fluctuates a bit, but it's pretty darn close every year.
And right, the reason it remains that way is because the line is drawn on who is in that large category by percentage every year, Cindy. So as properties sort of come and go, a single property may be this year a medium and next year a large, if they're near that mark, wherever that mark is, because that's what it's done. There's a line drawn in the sand on that percentage. Does that make sense? So the properties move. So
Well, that
for
brings
example, it goes the other way too, where a small property might be next time around, could be also a medium, and the other way around, a medium could become small.
So that brings another point up, John. Who is informing a potential medium property that they just became large and qualify to put themselves as a ballot on the large seat? Travis or Adrian, how does that, like, I mean, I can't remember where my lodging falls. I'm pretty sure we might fluctuate somewhere between medium and large depending on the year. But how would a medium lodging know that they've now been drawn on the large lodging line and could qualify?
Because the votes I suppose it's the county is the short answer. And the reason I would assume that is because they're sending out the ballots and they're going to identify who's in which category. And we don't get ballots if we're not in the category. We're not able to vote.
So the county determines.
So I would say it must go through the tax collector when they do the TOTs.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what's interesting about that is when it's time to do nominations, or when there's a seat open, I wonder if they know at that point. I was just talking about when at time of election, you're not going to get a ballot unless you're in that group. But if you want to put your name in the hat, I wonder if we all know then, because I don't know. I mean, I don't remember being notified that, okay, we need a medium seat and you're in the medium group. Do you want to participate? I don't recall that sort of thing. Does that happen? I don't know.
We should confirm with the county that an announcement goes out that says, the seat is up, you've qualified as medium. If you'd like to put your nomination in, here's what you have to do. I'm presuming the county is doing that and sending that out. But we should probably confirm that.
I can confirm that happens each year after Sherry posts the annual TOT and bid report.
Okay, and then Travis, would it be inappropriate to ask that VMC or you get a list of what lodging falls under large, medium, and small, so you can also spend time, or your organizational development committee can spend time reaching out to those people and say, hey, looks like you qualify. You should have gotten a letter. We'd love to encourage you to apply. Would that be inappropriate to request from the county?
No, and that's something that I get each year annually.
Oh, you do get a list
Yes.
of who fell into large?
Yeah.
Who fell into medium?
Yeah.
And is that kept private for just you and your staff, or is that public record?
It is not public record.
But the MCTC board, I presume, is privy to that information?
If they asked for it, I would show it to them one-on-one.
Okay. Would it be beneficial for this board to also have received that information so we could know which lodging, well, I guess we don't do any advocacy for trying to get people on the board, really. So I guess it wouldn't be necessary for us, this board, to know what those are. Sorry, somebody was about to say something that I cut off. Go ahead.
Well, two things. Travis, you get a list, but do the properties know? Are they informed after Sherry does the TOT? Are you saying that properties are informed of their status?
If there's an election, everybody in that category gets an election notification and form to fill out should they choose. For the,
If there's an election that year, but we're talking medium only gets it once every 3 years, right?
right.
So they'd only be, so John Dixon, they are not notified annually. The only way they're notified is if it's a seat's coming up in the next year and they're notified of the election based on their lodging sites. But officially, no.
Okay. So
I don't know why,
for
but
the
he
election,
has
yes, I've
annoyed me
seen those
since he's been on
ballots
this
come, but
board
what
for
about
How
at the
long's he
time of
been on here?
nomination, before nomination? Is that what you're talking about?
8 years.
Yes,
Oh,
that's how
jeez, really?
that's how it's
There's no term limits, I
announced.
take it.
Okay, got
Nobody
it.
wants to do this
So you're medium, you can put somebody's name in the hat. That's okay. So that's good.
shit. Irritates me.
I would like to hear from John and maybe Cindy too about your opinions about how to, if you have ideas about how to increase the pool of, potential board members, because that's what we're talking about here. And I'm not sure that we're all in agreement. And I'm just, maybe there's other ideas, and I'm curious what you guys think.
Just have a question, Travis. Is there a reason why Callie suggested that we alter, expand operator to more like general manager rather than requesting that we change the number of seats between large, medium, and small? Is there a reason why that was the request that she made? Do you know why if she would have a preference, or if MCTC would have a preference?
Right. For us, the simplest way is to change that one definition rather than change the one definition in the ordinance, rather than changing the bylaw for both the bid and MCTC by changing the seat designation. So it's a much simpler process for us.
So sorry, just to clarify then, if we wanted to, if the goal was to change the seat designation, the ordinance would need to be changed, the MCTC bylaws would need to be changed, and what else? Travis, is that it?
The bid bylaws.
And the
Because
advisory board bylaws. Okay.
Yeah. So each one of those documents holds the specified one member elected from large, one member elected from medium, one member elected from small. So those documents all would have to be amended if we changed
They better not.
that, if we went that direction. To just change
Or
change the definition of operator in the bylaw in the bid ordinance doesn't require a change for the sets of bylaws.
it's the easiest way to go about it. I see that. Is it also possible though to make one change, and that change change the designation of what's large, medium, and small? To say it maybe 40% of the bid is large, 40% is medium, 20% is small. Is that a possible route?
No, well, I mean, anything's possible.
Well, a possible route without having to change multiple documents. I'm talking about just
Right.
one
No,
document.
that again would require a change of 3 documents.
Okay.
And Travis, do you feel that by expanding the definition of operator, that would create a big enough pool to address Callie's concern of running out of large operators to take that position?
Yes, but it also gives us, if we write it the way that we've been talking about writing it, it opens up the pool for every category as well.
I see that being problematic, I guess, when I hear that,
Such a snob.
I mean, you could end up with a board that has no owners on it. I don't know what the possibility of that is, but and then, it's very specific, it's very clear who is eligible now. And if it becomes any kind of gray area, again, I don't think it's going to be an issue for any of the players in these times. But I don't know. I mean, I can see if it's possible to do it the other way. I guess I'd like to hear from folks what, considering all the different pieces, how difficult it is versus what's best to make a change to something that had a lot of work behind it and a lot of discussion and negotiation and all those different kinds of things. And there was reasons for them. If we make a change, we better make a recommendation for a change. We should be pretty sure about it. And I think, it's our responsibility to sort of hash that out. And I think, John, if you could weigh in and Cindy could weigh in, if you have any concerns about it, or if you have any other ideas about how to accomplish it, what we're trying to accomplish, that would be great.
Yeah, I guess I don't anticipate there being too many issues with making the simpler switch to changing the verbiage and widening how the selection criteria exist, and that would be my preference for simplicity. And as you said before, John, a lot of folks before us spent some time making sure that this was the work that was put into all of this was done thoughtfully, and I don't know that this change would undermine that, and I feel pretty comfortable with it. But I don't see any issue with going the other route, other than really making sure we're doing diligence on how a bigger change would affect the long term of this. And so, yeah, I'm sort of more leaning towards making that change in verbiage as was recommended or even suggested by Callie as a quicker way to widen the selection pool, which we really need. We need more participation, and hopefully it can still be overseen by qualified owners or enough of those who've been in the program long enough. And I still think, because the selection criteria has been established, and because the application process really outlines the qualifications, that there are enough hurdles to prevent an underqualified board or a committee. And I could be wrong, and that would not be favorable, but I don't know. I feel okay with it.
I'm just also remembering our discussion 2 weeks ago that, sometimes, particularly when you're talking about the larger properties, a general manager actually is more aware because they are actually dealing with the ins and outs of the business, whereas a lot of time the larger property owners are a little bit more removed. And so it could be just, a benefit to expand that. So that, not only increasing the pool, but perhaps even increasing it for those 3 seats to being people that are more actively involved with the business.
I agree with that, and that's a good thing to be reminded of. I think, though, then we didn't talk last time, and we are now, but about the idea of allowing this change for all sizes of properties. And what you're saying doesn't necessarily isn't the same in a medium or small property, where, a small property, if it's this Airbnb, is there really somebody who's like an owner and then somebody who's running it? I don't know, but in a medium property, same thing. If they're generally sort of owner operated, I would guess, versus the larger ones. And I think if we open it up across the board, do you see that being problematic? Meaning, saying or general manager or whatever the words we use, or somebody who's running the business, however we do language. Do we need to open it up that way to all the different sizes, or do we say with medium it has to be medium and small, it has to be the owner, and with the larger ones it can be an operations high level operations person? What about that assumption?
Well, aren't we, I think what we're addressing is Callie's original observation that the pool for the larger properties is running small. seems like that's not necessarily true for the medium and the small properties. So Travis, can you see any reason why that would look discriminatory, or it would be odd to write it in that way, that this would just apply to large properties?
Off the top of my head, nothing's coming, but I would think that we'd want to have the qualifications be equal across the board.
That is a good point. That would be my initial response as well, that we keep it equal across the board. But at the same time, I am considering, that if we just open if we can justify why we changed one versus all three, versus across the board, then that is another route we can take as well. And we can say that we did not have any problem finding medium or large seats. We did have a problem finding, we didn't have a problem finding medium or small seats, but we did have a problem finding large. So therefore we changed just the definition of large lodging operator to include general manager or designated employee. Because Travis, correct me if I'm wrong, but we could do that, right? We could change just the definition at large lodging operator. Is that defined? That's one of the definitions in the document, isn't it?
Let me just go and say.
Where is this doc? We're looking at the bid ordinance.
Small lodging operators are those operators primarily left of the medium operator, medium lodging operators who aggregate must merely generate the bottom 20% of the assessment revenue on a calendar basis.
I see. No, so we couldn't change large lodging operator. It doesn't sound like it really defines it, because it defines operator specifically on its own. Large, medium, and small is defined because it designates where they fall in the percentage, 60%, 20%, or 20%.
Correct.
I gotta say too, I mean, my opinion on this, I honestly don't feel like the 5 lodging seats are equally representative of the county. There's 3 large on there, and that's 20 businesses out of 400. And then there's there's 2 seats for the remaining, the remaining 380, which puts me back to leaning to want to
2 telecom forms.
alter the representation to be 2 large, 2 medium,
the other one for?
1 small.
You put different definitions on there, what you want to talk on. If you look at the bottom, one's about 6A and one's about,
Collaboration, planning
So,
with
oh.
other 8 entities. What the hell's that?
I don't know what that
I don't even know what
means.
category that's in.
I guess we still have more. It sounds like we need to think about this a little bit more.
Discussion?
Or do we continue to hash it out in this discussion?
I think it would be good to move on, but I'm completely fine with that direction. I think it would require a little bit more work and wordsmithing. And Marcus, it sounds like you have been thinking about this, or do you and John want
Call the meeting to
to
order,
draft
or is Julie gonna do
a
it?
recommendation
Technically,
and
by bylaws,
submit it
it's
for
you.
our next meeting,
Oh,
so that
really?
we can
And then you
just
request
sort
a
of
motion for share.
Oh, okay.
all analyze and decide
Julia
if that's
probably will
amenable
then.
to this board.
Okay.
That sounds like a good
But yeah,
way to
technically,
go.
planning
John,
commission bylaws,
Dixon,
the clerk calls and
are you cool with that? You and I want to spend some time.
Again. After the board election. But I don't
He's
make
muted.
them back for minutes.
Yeah, I'm okay with doing that. I mean, we still have time. We're in February, so I think we're well ahead of the game on the report this year. So let's do that. I think maybe John and I can get together and
Travis.
come up with how we want to word that potential recommendation. Let's finalize this recommendation though as a potential, as part of the draft too, so we can look at the wording of it in the next meeting.
Finalizing.
With that, let's put aside for the moment the possibility of altering the seats to 2 large, 2 medium, to 1 small, and let's focus on finalizing this draft recommendation to provide a not just the owner, but a general manager or similar position authorized representative. So we would need to just hash out the wording on that, get that in so we can review it in the next meeting. And John Glidewell, I liked your suggestion of general manager or similar. What did you say? Similar employee
I
designated for
close.
key operations or major business operations. Travis?
I caught that pretty close when he was talking. So let me reread that recommendation as I have it right now. Change the following section of the bid ordinance to include general manager or similar employee designated as responsible for top level business operations.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good direction to go. And we can review it again, think about it and review it again in the next meeting. To see if we want to adjust or amend it in any way. But I suggest we go with that and move on.
This meeting is March 3rd.
Great, yeah, and thanks for agreeing to work on the next, the verbiage for the other option, and we can discuss and decide which direction works best as a board and move on. And I think it was really productive conversation. So thanks for everyone for your time on this.
Great, thanks, John. Okay, so moving along, we've been talking about the recommendations actionable by the county. Does any board member have any other recommendations they'd like to suggest that are actionable by the Mendocino County? Yeah. Okay,
I do not.
I don't either. Thanks.
No.
Okay. So let's talk about any recommendations that this board might have that are actionable by Mendocino County Tourism Commission. Chime in if you do or do not.
I do not.
I don't either. I wish I did. I felt like that it's our responsibility to come up with things, but I think we talked about that last time that, Callie, I think, brought this one up, and it's a good one to discuss, but I think there aren't any others, and it's partially because of where we are. We're sort of in status quo because of COVID and all that. I think it's partially that, but also we've really gotten to a good place, and a lot of the things have been addressed over the last few years. So I think for that reason, maybe we don't need to invent any either. So no is the short answer.
Okay, that is fine. And of course, we have more meetings in the future. If any recommendations actionable by the county or by Mendocino County Tourism Commission, board members will still have time to potentially provide those in future meetings. So I think we should move along. Travis, if we could go through the additions to the report, aside from the recommendations that have changed from the last time we viewed the report. I think it's if you could just go quickly through what's been added and any necessary information along with that.
Sure. I'm going to start at the very most top page.
Sounds good.
And additions, I'm scrolling. Starting on page 12. I still need to insert the DMAI financial profile study in there. They should have that to me by the end of this month of February, and I can plop it in. We inserted on the next page, which would be page 13, we've inserted our public relations statistics there. Moving down, the same for social media.
Oh, hold on, Travis, sorry. If any board members have questions about what Travis is covering, go ahead and chime in rather than going all through it and then going back to our questions. Okay, sorry, Travis, continue.
No worries. Thanks for clarifying. Social media stats have been added to page 13. Moving on to page 15, we have our first 6 months of the year PR projections and stats for year to date. Move on further, we have more social media stats there on page 16 in the graph.
No graph, so that's still to be inserted?
Yes, I guess I inserted that after I shipped it to you. Sorry.
I don't have a graph. Does anybody else have a graph? No, okay.
I think it's
Sorry,
not.
Travis, continue.
Wow, the
Okay.
irony of having. on 420.
Then
Yes, please, add a placeholder.
moving way down, I updated the
I wasn't
area
gonna
on
comment
page
the 420, but
21.
okay.
That includes the budget for the year, and that this number follows a decision made by the MCTC Finance Committee and Board of Directors to increase the amount of reserves to
Lindsay
keep on
says, I
hand
may or may not have
in the
giggled
case
at the
that tourism
placeholder,
needs
and
to
you've got it.
close, as in
Lindsay,
FY
I may or may not have giggled
1920
at that placeholder.
due to the COVID-19.
Yeah, I made this 420, thanks.
Okay, question. So you'll have two contingency funds then, the one required by the bid and then the additional one that the MCTC board has decided to create, correct?
Yep.
And so are those, am I reading this wrong? So those are separated on this list. The reserve contingency fund at the bottom, the 296,000, that's the 10% of the expenses for the year?
Correct.
And that's 10% of 1,045,000?
Well, that is not the correct number. We are not going to lessen the number in the contingency fund. It would be 118,000 if we were operating at 10%, but the whole idea is to keep more in reserves in case something happens. So they're not going to lower that contingency amount.
Oh, okay. And there's no conflict with being able to do that in the bid ordinance law?
No, we just have to have the minimum.
Oh, okay. So it says at least. And is it at least 10% or of the income or the expenses?
It's
I thought it was the expenses.
of the bid advisory board is that reserve equal to 100,000 or 10% of the annual expenses, whichever is greater.
So it technically would be the expenses, not the.
Correct.
So we'd be looking at 104,000 if it was the 10% versus, so we're almost 3 times that amount. Plus you got another 143,000 to add in that contingency. Is that correct?
Yes.
So so this organization will, in a sense, have a savings of $440,000. That seems necessary for you and from the MCTC board?
That's what was approved. Yes. I mean, if something worked and the whole, just start the story over again of why this is proposed is because we know exactly what it costs to run the organization at a baseline.
And the baseline was 440,000, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I knew that number sounded familiar.
Yeah. And so that is why we're doing this, so that, in case there is ever anything again, and there is no TOT or bid coming in, the organization needs to be able to operate until it comes out of that state so that it can,
Survive.
rebuild.
COVID.
Yeah. I see. That makes sense. I mean, the original contingency fund was originally for if the business were to dissolve to cover the remaining liabilities.
Right.
This, in fact, as the MCTC and you have prepared for,
personally.
if there was a year
Seriously.
of no
I
income,
just keep
you
saying,
could
what's the
survive and
next
continue to operate.
Flu that
Correct.
China's going to give us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we got
forward thinking.
Swine
I think.
flu.
All right.
Bird flu.
Any input from any of the boards on the financial
We got
report
bat
here?
flu. We've had SARS before. This is SARS.
Oh, looks good.
Yeah, but now there's all these variances coming up.
So just to be clear, that for the board, this is the, when we accept this, we've submitted to the Board of Supervisors, and this is what MCTC and VMC will operate in accordance to. So just to keep that in mind.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no comments.
Great. And Travis, in the negative number in the income, the county administrative fee, that is at the most they'll take, right? That's 3%, but they don't always take the 3%. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What did they take last year, just out of curiosity? Or have they yet?
3%.
They did take the full 3. Okay.
Generally, it's like between 1 and 1.5. If we have an
I never
election.
know what Sherry's going to
If we have an election and Sherry's staff has to, go through that process,
Yeah, it
And-
makes more time.
we end up with the 3%.
Gotcha. It all just depends on their time commitment,
Yeah, exactly.
but not to exceed 3%.
Correct.
Great. All right, let's continue on.
And then we come down to status updates. And nothing has changed in the status updates other than what I included from Sherry Schattmeyer. Looks like there is still one status update from Adrian to be taken care of, but I'll work with Steve Dunicliffe on that one and not bother her.
The what?
The campground thing.
So it's getting to be very tight. We're getting real close, other than recommendations.
Travis, just to clarify, the recommendation that you'll work with Steve Dunicliffe on is the county
Campground.
planning and building services staff to work with clerk of the board to get quarterly reviews.
Correct.
Okay. Great. We'll look forward to hopefully having that status update in the next meeting.
Blair.
It looks like, yeah, we've hit the recommendations portions of the report, which we have already covered. So does the board, any of the board members have any other questions, suggestions, comments they would like to add at this point?
Please no.
Please no, let's just end.
I don't. Thanks, Market.
Please, can we get done early?
No, thank you, Marcus.
Looks good, Marcus.
Great, thanks all. And so Travis, let's just get a quick timeline update. We have how many more meetings before we would like to submit this to the Board of Supervisors?
Technically 3.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Push to the first April meeting.
Through April 7th.
Okay, great. And if we want to provide this draft or a somewhat mostly finalized draft for MCTC to look over, when do we have to have
After that first meeting in April, the following week would be my board of directors meeting where I would share that.
and we would still have one more meeting where we could address any recommendations or changes from that board? Or we would not?
No, you would not.
Okay, can we adjust that? I would like to be able to provide MCTC the draft report and give any potential feedback they have for us on it. And in order to do that, then I guess we'd have to get a draft done before the MCTC March meeting,
Correct.
which is when?
Thursday the 11th.
So then I guess by the next meeting then, if we wanted to provide a draft to the board, we'd have to have somewhat finalized by the March 3rd meeting then.
Correct.
And is that enough time to post and add this report to their agenda?
Yes.
Cool. Is the rest of the board okay with that? I do like to be considerate of the MCTC board's input regarding this. It is just input. I'm not looking for anything other than potential input that we could consider or not consider. Go ahead, John Dixon.
Timeline is doable, and we should get. Yes, I agree. We should get it in for them for the 11th. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll hopefully have the majority of this draft finalized by the end of the next meeting on the 3rd. And yeah, I think we're pretty close, right, Travis?
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with where we're at.
Great. Perfect. All right. Anything else from the board? Here's my agenda.
No.
Everything looks good to me.
Great. Thank you, John Gladwell. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, the minutes. Looks like so we'll move on to 6B, approval of the minutes. I've lost my agenda. Where is it? Here you go. February 17th. Okay, approval of the draft January 2020 minutes. Looking for a motion to approve agenda item 6B, draft minutes from January 20th.
I'll move to approve.
Great.
Seconded.
John Gladwell seconds. John Dixon moved. John Gladwell seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Do we do this by roll call or just a bunch of ayes?
Voice vote.
Huh?
You can do voice vote. All those in favor.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to 6C, approval of the draft minutes from February 3rd, 2021. Looking for a motion?
I motion to
Move to approve. Oh, Cindy got it first.
Cindy got in there first. So Cindy moves.
Seconded.
John Gladwell seconds. Any discussion on those draft minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Continuing on to item 7, matters from the advisory board. Do we have any matters from the advisory board? Other than we're still looking for.
No.
Sorry. Okay. Sounds like we do. So who's first? Who was that?
John said no. I heard that. And then I have something I want to say for the record. On the point of changing the definition of who is eligible to serve on the board of MCTC, I am recalling that it was the large properties who really wanted to ensure that it was owners, because I think that the problematic times people on the boards were from not necessarily from the large properties. So it's interesting that it's sort of being suggested from the folks who really wanted it to ensure that it was owners from the large properties. Those were the folks who were really sort of pushing for it to be owners so that it wasn't abused in any kind of a way. And I'm just noting it because I think that just is indicative, a good indicator of where we are, that folks are feeling, Callie in particular and others are feeling comfortable with the structure that was put in place years ago for MCTC, that there's this comfort level that it's going well, and that by making this change, it won't be a negative. So the fact that I'm sort of personally sort of want to make sure that we're doing the right thing is sort of a swap, a flip-flop, and I just want to be careful. And if Callie is sort of going for it or even suggesting it, I just wanted to sort of note that I think that's a very good sign of where the organization is.
You make a very good point, John Dixon, and yes, it is. It does seem that maybe that some of the people back in the day that were adamant about it being owners have changed their mind. It might seem like that, but keep in mind it is the whole MCTC board that moved to do this, and that's 6 non-lodging representatives, 3 large lodging representatives, and a medium and a small. So it comes from a diverse group of people diverse board that wants to potentially make this change. But you're right. I think we really need to think about this because, for those of you, John and Cindy, John Dixon and I come from a time when there was, for lack of a better term, a little civil war going on of who was in control of the bid funds, what governing structure governed what. And I think both John and I come from a point that we don't want this or anything to be structured to allow that to lead to that again or to happen again. And so this is opening up a can of worms potentially. I think we all need to think about what negative possible repercussions down the line could happen if we were to change the definition from owners to include general managers or whatever it is we're gonna do. So think about that. What negative things. But I think if we're coming from a point, as John Dixon pointed out, that it's a positive thing. We're doing this to add more involvement, and there are pros and cons. And one of the big pros is, as it's mentioned a lot of times, that the general manager sometimes has better knowledge of the operations than the owner. So let's continue to think about the pros and cons of making this potential change to the definition of operator. Think about possibly if there's any other ways that we could go about this. We will, John Dixon and I will hopefully have a potential mocked up recommendation for the alternative of changing, the structure from 3 lodging and 1 medium and 1 small to something other than that. But yeah. All right. Any other matters from the board?
Thanks for those comments, John Dixon and Marcus.
Yeah, you're welcome. And go ahead, Cindy.
No, I was just going to say, something I've learned over the years is why is that there to begin with? Sometimes you can see a pendulum swing, kind of based on what you're reacting to, and we don't want to react away from something that we learned in history. And so, I just think the pieces of you guys having had longevity are so important. It's like, why is that there to begin with? We need to really consider those things. So thank you, John. It's very helpful.
Yeah, Cindy, well said. I agree with you completely. Okay, the only other matter I would like to bring up, which is what I bring up at every meeting, is that we still have a vacated seat, which is, remind me again, Travis, Inland Lodge?
Inland, no, it's just inland.
Inland lodging operator. So that'd be Willits, Ukiah, Anderson Valley.
Hopland, Laytonville, Leggett, Colo.
That's part of our county? I'm kidding. Joking.
Yeah,
okay, so
no further definition. It's just an inland representative.
Inland lodging owner representative, right?
Correct.
And I forget, do we have in our bylaws the ability to have an authorized representative?
Yeah, it's not owner for us, I don't think. I think I read in the bylaws that it could also be operator.
I think you're correct. I think in our bylaws it does designate that we can have an authorized designee from the owner. Anyway, so keep that in mind. Keep your, always keep your ear out as you're talking to other of your lodging owner friends who might own a property inland, to say, hey, we have a seat, and they can join and be part of next year's group, as we are pretty much almost done with this year's report.
Just a question on that.
Mhm.
We've had a really active group meeting on Mondays. And John does such a great job of just asking everybody to state where you're from. Do we have any active members of that group that are inland that John or Travis or anyone would recognize?
I did invite Lori to join us. Lori, from Rivers Bend, and she just didn't have the time this year.
Right, and among the ones that are pretty much consistent, there's nobody else in that's from inland?
Not that I can put my finger on.
Okay, thank you, Travis.
Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. I have to go back and look, but
I think Ian, obviously has his Seagull property, but I don't know if he has a vacation rental. He lives in Ukiah, I think half the time, or sometimes anyway. So I don't know if that qualifies him if he has a vacation rental there or not. It's just a thought.
yeah, he does not have anything listed inland on the tax rolls
I see.
as a vacation property.
Okay. Oh, I guess one last matter for the board. Is it a conflict of interest if any of our board members wanted to apply for any available upcoming seats on the MCTC board, which they would be sat, if appointed, they would be sat this this next January. Is it a conflict of interest for a lodging owner to sit on both the bid advisory board and the MCTC board at the same time? Anybody?
I think there was precedence for that. I think that has happened in the past. I don't have any specifics, but one thing would be to see if it's happened before, precedence. The other would be to see if there's anything specifically written about that in any of the bylaws. And I don't recall that there is, that it's either or. So it's a good question, but it also means, we have to be qualified to do it, meaning, medium, large, small. And I don't know if any of us, if there's seats coming up that we would even qualify for. But right. And as far as the seats available here, I think it's on the very first page of this report that Travis sent out today. It's just a single, it's documented there, which is great. Thanks for doing that, Travis. I noticed that today.
Yeah.
What is it, you mean on the draft, the draft report?
Yeah.
Yeah, the draft report, the very first page has the open seat.
And
So it's referenced, yeah.
Yeah. And, Travis, do we have somewhere on this draft report where it lists our term?
Yeah.
Each specific? Where is that?
It's in the appendix in the back.
That's it. Okay, I knew I saw it somewhere. Okay. Great, and I do believe that, Travis, you would probably know, just to help communicate and spread the word, there are 3 seats that will be needing to be filled this next January on the MCTC board, and I believe one of them is an at-large. Is that correct?
Give me just 1 second. Now that I'm talking to you guys, I get them confused as to whose date what. Just 1 second. Yeah, so I have food and beverage.
Oh, there you go.
No, excuse me. I have arts attractions coming up. I have large inland and small lodging.
Large inland. Is that lodging or is that?
It's lodging, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. So 2 lodging seats and a arts and attraction seat, huh?
So it's large inland and the small was where?
Small,
Malls everywhere.
it's just small, and the large inland is it's the at-large position, so it's large at-large.
Oh, no, so it's not lodging. It's the at-large
No.
seat.
No,
The general.
it is the large at-large position.
Oh, the large lodging at-large.
Oh, you're saying, okay, so there's, right, so the small is countywide because there's only 1.
Right.
For large, there's 3, so there must be a coastal, an inland, and an at-large.
Correct.
So it can be either, is what
Gotcha.
it, yeah. Okay,
Great.
okay.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
The only thing I want to say, in finally here, is that I'm missing the thumbs up thing, because sometimes, we're being asked for feedback, comments, and people say things, and I know we don't have the thumbs up here, but I just want to say that I probably would have hit it at least 5 times, so I'm letting you know.
Thanks, John.
What happens if you hit the raise? What happens if you hit the raise hand instead? Will that confuse things?
It would confuse everything. I don't want to ever do that. I'm kidding.
Oops. I just did it. Yep.
I also really miss the chat feature, especially when all of us have bad internet. So that's the feature I really
You don't
miss.
want that.
Yeah, it's because of the structure of this being streamed, the nature of this meeting, and the fact that it's being streamed on YouTube. I think
Right.
those are-
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what they told us. So it's a good reason, but I still miss it.
Okay. Well, it looks like, John, just in the future, you could, give a high five and, which is raise your hand, and then lower it at some point. So if you want, we can say that means we're in approval.
That's a workaround. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Okay. So adjournment. We good to adjourn?
So moved.
Next meeting or what? Do you
Okay,
want-
great. We are adjourned at
Okay.
2:54 p.m. on Wednesday, February 17th. Thank you all. We'll
for
see
all your help.
everybody on March 3rd, right?
Yep.
And I believe the invite for that has already been emailed out.
Actually, I talk about that for a second. If I can't be here, do we have a quorum?
Yes, as long as we have 3 members, we should have a quorum.
Actually, I'm looking at it. I have an appointment at 3, so I don't have a conflict.
Great.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks so much.
I've let Adrian know this already, but somehow my email address hasn't gotten on the last 2. And so Adrian, I just let her know the day before, still haven't gotten it, and she's just sends it to me directly, but she's working on that, so that I have it in the future.
We'll get it fixed, Cindy.
Thanks, I appreciate you, Adrian.
You're welcome.
We all do.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thumbs up. See, I have to say it because I can't do it.
All right, let's go ahead and end the meeting. We'll see you on the 3rd.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.